Hey there, I'm Tracy Rigdon, and this is the Contrast Project Lounge podcast. Often random, but always relevant, always real, and practically nothing is off limits. This podcast is for you. Are you ready for this? Let's do it. Welcome back to another edition of Wednesday Night Live of the Contrast Project Lounge podcast with my co-host, Mr. Jim Alabiso. Jim, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing really good. I was kind of nervous about yesterday. I was nervous about today's show because, it was up in the air. Who's going to win and all this.
Well,
and now I'm just trying to put on a happy face, hide my depression.
There was a lot of people had some anxiety this morning. That is for sure. If you've watched any of the social media, you'll notice that a lot of people were on edge, upset, and some people downright anxious about it. And like I was telling some folks before it even started, go ahead and make arrangements ahead of time to take the day off because you might need it.
Yeah, and I'm sure that
I'm assuming a whole lot of people went ahead and agreed to some day drinking today.
I know some of my friends were texting me like, I'm laying in the bed drinking champagne right now, and not in a celebratory way.
Oh, I know. Hey,
I think benzodiazepine prescriptions probably went up today.
I bet they did. At least their intake.
Well, Jim, that's what we're going to be talking about today, and we have two guests with us that are gonna enlighten us on their opinions about the comings and goings of the election process. We have from the Daily Dot, Claire Goforth, and independent journalist Mr. Shelton Hull, my good friend, former co-host of the show. Claire, let's start with you. I want to ask you. We were talking. Everybody's been talking about it, and you were covering the election night shenanigans. So give us, just a broad picture of, what you saw, how it was being covered. Because I'll tell you, I watched it on 3 different networks just to make sure, and the numbers were different as they kept going along, from 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10, 11, 12. The numbers were different on all 3 networks. They were all different. And of course, the pundits that were, commenting on that were definitely all different. I actually included in that bunch Fox News. So to have a little contrast, So
how did brave man?
I know. It was hard. It was painful.
No pun intended.
It was painful to watch them, I tell you. So give us your take on it, in a nutshell, what you were, when you were, doing your investigation of it and, what you saw as it went along.
Yeah, I mean, just like you, Tracy, I'm following the results. I've got New York Times open, Washington Post open. I'm checking in with the networks. I'm following things online, and I'm seeing totally different results. I was looking at the Duval Supervisor of Elections website. I'm seeing Charlie Kirk, that right-wing dude, called Duval, and the results aren't even in all the way on the Duval Supervisor of Elections website. And I just feel like for the, if somebody who is trying to figure out what's going on, your average consumer of news, they're going to probably pick one and feel like that's going to be the one that's right.
Yeah.
And then as the night wears on, as things start changing, it's hard to have faith in the process for some people because, where one site that you consider reputable is saying one thing and another is saying another.
Sure.
I mean, pretty early on, it was starting to look like things were turning in Trump's favor.
Sure.
There was some denial. There's a lot of disinformation out there. But, it was just the wild, wild west of election night coverage is how it felt last night, honestly.
Sure.
Certainly was unique.
Well, we definitely saw a trend that we normally see in the presidential elections, that thing they're calling the red mirage. You're talking about 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when they're going up and down the coast, and there's a lot of red rural, states and counties up in that swatch of land. And so the smaller areas get counted fast, and then everybody's talking about, then if you wait and wait and wait, you start seeing the blue shift. But we didn't really see much of a blue shift as the night went on. Shelton, when you were there's some other characteristics we saw too, with the as we were all watching it before. A lot of people were talking about the bad remarks, his misogynistic remarks in his rallies, and the insults that that comedian at his rally hurled at the Puerto Rican people. And I had seen something, and that's amazing to me. They still, well over 20% of Puerto Rican men still voted for him, or Latino men, Hispanic, and that's a large group of people. So, Shelton, I saw where you had posted something earlier, and it's been in the news too. I've watched some of the channels talking about the black toxicity. There was a lot of the pundits on TV talking about where there's a large percentage, I think it's somewhere around 20% of registered black men still voted for him, and some of them even told the reporters that they didn't trust a woman in office.
Yeah. I did come up with that term, the year of black toxicity. It's a little weird. It first popped up when Cat was doing his podcast earlier this year. It's this whole thing of spilling the tea, receipts and screenshots of private conversations. This whole, for a culture that's built very much around the stop snitching concept, there's a lot of self-snitching going on, whether it's in rap or whether it's in politics. And that's kind of expanded. The fact is we had 22% of black men voted for Donald Trump, and that's what happens when you let felons get the right to vote back, I guess. It's,
Yeah.
The issues, the fact is in the black community, we were all raised on Martin Luther King, the civil rights movement, all this, and the protest movement of more recent years. But, black people aren't a monolith. There are a lot of factions, a lot of splits, geographical, based on the color of their skin, based all the usual class and education differences. Those come to play as well. And there is a latent misogyny in the culture where, things, using the word pimpin' and stuff like that, like for that to, or like that's not supposed to be something celebrated in the culture, but it is. There's a lot of latent misogyny and a lot of latent homophobia. We saw that as far back as, say, when Alvin Brown helped kind of put the kibosh on the HRO that first time it came around. And we see it, like a lot of the fact is a lot of that stuff that Trump was saying and his surrogates were saying, the racism, the misogyny, the homophobia, the blatant appeals to violence resonated significantly with a majority of the registered voters. Now, it's funny, here in Jacksonville, Trump won Duval County. He won by 7,000. He beat Harris by 7,062 votes. If you add up the 5 third-party candidates and the write-in candidates, that's 7,662 votes combined. So you take away those other candidates, and Harris wins Duval County. Now, whether that makes an impact on the overall Florida vote or anything else, it's hard to say. But it was, it's much like the hesitancy that a lot of women showed with Hillary in 2016. As a black man from the South, the fact that 22% of black men voted for Donald Trump, I think it's a fucking disgrace and an embarrassment. And I have no respect for anybody that was involved with that. I say this prayerfully, so it resonates.
Yeah. Jim.
Throw that prayerfully in there.
Yeah, right. Jim, we had talked over a couple of the talking points about the outcome of the election earlier today. Care to share with us one that's top of your mind?
One, we were talking about retort a little while ago. One of the funnest thing I got to read this morning, I think this happened last night, but this was the Angie Nixon and Mayor Curry interview. Did you see that? It was on Action News.
Yeah.
And you know which one I'm talking about? Did you happen to see that?
I
She
didn't
was
see
laying
it.
in the
Yeah.
to former Mayor Curry and about the rhetoric, and he just stayed silent for the whole time when he was talking about when she was talking about people that are being threatened and the violence or potential violence, the anger that some of the rhetoric, and he just sat there, and that's whether you agree with his politics or not. He just sat there and then talked about President Biden, who isn't running for president, saying the trash word, right?
Oh, yeah.
But didn't really want to acknowledge anything else. I was thinking about that. But another thing I was thinking about was, does anybody know what's happening with the House? I don't think it's been called yet. Let me look really quick.
My sister had
they just did an
contacted me
update.
earlier about the House. I know they got the Senate, and they've got the 3 appointed judges in the Supreme Court, which is
well, right now,
which is a fucking nightmare if that
I
guy
think-
gets in there. Jesus.
Well, for the GOP right now, they got 205, so they need 13 more to get a majority. So let's just say they get a majority, right? So now they got the Senate and the House.
And we're locked up.
Okay, so well, there's some lemons and there's some lemonade in there because you and I were talking about earlier this afternoon. I think when I was driving home from the office that about under the cover kind of strategy and stirring up things and confusing things, et cetera, et cetera. So, so there's a lot of this rhetoric going out that former President Trump would view, drill, baby drill, right? And then the waffling around abortion this way and that way. And what do you call
He's
it?
weaving. He's weaving.
Right. Right. So
His weave.
there's two
Shit.
things that come out of that. One is that I'm pretty positive that Republicans in general would love to see the old party back and kind of balance this MAGA thing back to the old style Republican, classic Republican thing. So I kind of think there's a good chance that when January rolls around and we have a new president, that some of these, let's get rid of all the immigrants on first day and let's build a wall. Oh, we tried to do that. It never happened, kind of thing. He's going to get a lot of dissent on his extreme policies. So
Sure.
It's not, I don't think it's going to be just because the House and the Senate control, the Republicans control. I think that he's going to get some resistance. So it's not going to be all, sugar and cream for him. So if there's lemonade in those lemons, that's
Right.
Yeah. And I also think, and going back to the weaving in and out and in and out, is that on policy. What did he say the other day? Don't talk about that or don't ask about that.
He's going to fix it, whatever it is.
Because now I know it was abortion, but it was like
Oh, yeah.
it was like against it, and he was for it, and he don't want to talk about it. So that took the kind of paralyzed the female voters somewhat, and that okay, well, it looks like it's just not going to be a federal thing. It'll be in the hands of the states. Or one day I heard him say this, one day I heard him say that. So it's not such an important issue when I make a decision between him and Harris, right?
Yes.
So some of the other issues might be more important to them, like cost
Well, a lot of people,
groceries or.
There was a lot of people that said that were interviewed throughout the night and throughout today that I saw. Oh, we got an echo there. That had some people had claimed that they voted for him for one or two things over here, but they didn't like this over here, but they still didn't want to vote for her. So whether they agreed with some of her policy or some of the stuff she was putting out, they still agree with him on a couple things. And again, like you mentioned, he keeps saying as of late that he doesn't want to make it a national abortion ban. But I honestly think he's full of shit because his minion around the country are already doing it. And before we, I mean, there's going to be the pundits are all over the airways right now talking about the election, the big election. Before we got started, Claire and I, we mentioned something about the elections here in Florida. And that one being Amendment 4, and that's the 6-week abortion ban, which the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, spent, well, I don't know how much, millions of dollars on negative ad campaigns to squash it. And what's your take on that, Claire, on the abortion ban, the 6 weeks, the amount of people that have come out, the women that have come out and complained about not being able to
and
get...
also, Claire, too, mentioned
Yeah.
where that money was coming from.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, the governor spent tens of millions.
Yeah.
Governor DeSantis spent tens of millions of dollars of taxpayer money to defeat Amendment 4 and Amendment 3. He tasked the heads of state agencies with publicly going out against the amendment. That's a clear violation of Florida law. And he went on this, and which is his right to go on the speaking tour, but is it his right to spend our money to oppose something that's a political issue? According to the Florida law, it is not. And yet he just brazenly did that. And then he also is blamed with the state threatening prosecution of television stations for airing ads in support of Amendment 4. And I mean, it's so bad that a federal judge said, to put it simple for the state of Florida, it's the First Amendment, stupid, in a written opinion. Like, that is how brazen the state has been when it comes to opposing those amendments. And they both failed. And I saw Governor DeSantis out there just spreading disinformation. I saw him out there telling people that they should never vote for a constitutional amendment, which is it's pretty messed up. And, just never vote for it. But I guess he's cool with the ones that the legislature puts in because they're his little whipping boys.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, the fact that the governor is spending tens of millions of dollars of our money to oppose these ballot initiatives, in the case of Amendment 4, nearly 1 million people signed. I don't remember with Amendment 3, but the threshold is super high. It's like 800,000 or something like that signed to defeat things that are very publicly popular. And let's be real, just a few years ago, before we did pass via ballot initiative, raising the threshold from 50 to 60%, these would have easily passed. And right now in the state of Florida, we'd be headed into a world where one of us could go down and buy some recreational marijuana if we chose to, and a girl or a woman wouldn't be forced to carry her rapist baby to term. Because that's where we are in Florida. That's just where we are. Unfortunately, I hate to put it that way. Sorry to your viewers, but that's just reality.
Yeah, I was talking with my sister last night, and she made a very good point. My sister is gay, and she remarried and moved to Maryland. And Maryland is a very open state, and they don't have an abortion ban, and they're very they're gay community friendly, and so she's living her best life. She's older than me, and she said, listen, it's not just abortion bans.
That's me.
Yep. She said it's not just abortion bans. It's the matter of fact that OBGYNs are now reluctant to provide any kind of care to a woman that comes in of childbearing age. And so a lot of OBGYNs are either retiring early or they're moving to another state that is more friendly to them. So
they're afraid of litigation.
Right. And there are fewer doctors in medical school, or those who have just left medical school and going into that specialty. So
not just litigation, prison.
Yeah. Prison. And
what else, Claire?
Yeah.
5 years of prison. They could get 5 years of prison. Anyone who performs or participates in an abortion could get 5 years in prison and up to a $5,000 fine. Wow. And now the Florida legislature has said, well, that doesn't apply to women. We won't be putting them in jail. But I'm sorry, participating in abortion, just reading the plain language of the law, if you're getting one, then you're participating in one. It's completely disingenuous. And does that count? Does that also include any of the nurses or any of the other medical people who are in the room? I mean,
Right.
certainly it could. And we haven't seen cases like this yet, but now they are going to be so emboldened based on the outcome of this election that I do think we're going to see these cases. And at the same time, we're going to see things that like happened to a woman in Florida just a year ago. She was forced to carry a child who she very much wanted, who had a terminal abnormality to
Right.
term, deliver that baby and watch it die in her arms immediately because she could not get the care that she needed in Florida. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, from what I gathered, it was a little bit more than immediately. It was like 90 minutes. The baby had to suffer for 90 minutes before it died.
It was not immediately. You're right. It was
That's
brief, but
that's
horrific.
horrible.
It's horrific,
Yeah.
to put somebody through that.
Oh, absolutely. But both the husband and the wife. I mean, it's tearing the family apart. But the mother especially. A mother's going to feel that a lot more. Now, when it goes to Amendment 3, and Shelton, you're the expert on weed up here in North Florida.
Yep.
Well, Shelton happens. Well, Shelton happens to write. Shelton happens to write a weed column for Folio Weekly, and has been doing so for years now. So, and he's actually got some samples there for us. So,
yeah, I'm just chilling with Hillary here. Actually, thanks to Claire and Sam Taylor, portfolio publisher, it was their idea for me to do the weed column. We started doing that back in, I believe, probably about
2018,
2017,
something like that. Yeah.
7 years now. We've done several hundred of them. I think it's been pretty good. Amendment 3 passed here in Duval County, barely, like by less than 1 percentage point. I think that first of all, let me circle back to the abortion thing, because, a lot of conservatives say that, well, it's a national thing. It's up to the states. There's not going to be a national ban. And it's kind of, they're right in some ways, but I think it's kind of a red herring, because a nationwide abortion ban has been like a fundamental principle for these, for the alt-right, these right-wing conservatives, since the days of Newt Gingrich, practically. And it is a states' rights thing, but you look at it, look how many state legislators and governors, including our governor here in Florida, Ron DeSantis, if Trump wasn't president, if Trump wasn't president back when his first election, would DeSantis have gotten all the support and all the funding that he needed to narrowly get by Andrew Gillum, in which case, a lot of this stuff may have never happened, and I think they'll start arrests on that very soon. I also think within a year or two, we'll see somebody shoot up an abortion clinic and try to claim a stand your ground thing. Like, someone will get a woman pregnant, and then they'll want to terminate, and then they'll just decide, oh, that's, how people get as far as things like that. By this time next year, the only legal abortion you'll be able to get in Florida is Jaguar football. But as to the Amendment 3, I think a big factor in it failing here was that the Democratic Party on a national level never viewed Florida and the South in general as being in play. I think that, whether or not the fact that, Harris and Walz did not really come and do any major events, or any events I can think of here in Florida, particularly Northeast Florida, was a huge missed opportunity. They allowed themselves to get gaslit by national media, which was already leaning right-wing the whole time, gaslight them into not competing in Florida, which, whether Harris could have won Florida or not, I think she could have. Personally, I think it was very much in play. But the fact is, I think if Harris had turned out more, at least a couple more times, the turnout for Amendment 3 might have been better. I think that it was unfortunate that Florida, we didn't really get very good placement at the Democratic Convention. If I were running the party, I would have put a big spotlight on Donna Deegan, showing how you can beat, these alt-right conservatives in conservative territories, even when you're outfunded, by simply having the right candidate and the right message. That could have been something that a lot of communities around this country could have, folded in with their marching papers as they began building towards, like, the next round of, like, congressional elections and things like that. But then, Deegan, when she endorsed Amendment 3, she gave scoop to Florida politics. Good for them. It was a very important scoop. They put it on the website at 10:30 on a Saturday morning. Got about 10,000 clicks. I get more clicks for wrestling tweets. Thanks for saying I am the expert on weed in Florida, and maybe I am, but this entire campaign, not you're the first media person, the only media person, only politician of any type to even mention weed to me at all this year. If you looked at my inbox and my texts and my Facebook messages, it'd be like almost like Amendment 3 wasn't happening at all, at least from the perspective of official sources. Once it got on the ballot, the whole time DeSantis was, for all the money that DeSantis spent on these ads and stuff, and he really kind of drove the narrative the whole time. Tim Rivers had truly spent $100 million. If Amendment 3 had passed, the big winner for that would have been Donald Trump, because Donald Trump put more energy into supporting Amendment 3 than all the Democratic politicians in the state of Florida combined. They ran from it like they were Bill Clinton in the 90s, or like they were Obama in 2008. Obama thanked his drug dealer in his high school yearbook, but didn't have a word to say about his own mom. You would think that guy could maybe get abortion legalized, but they didn't do it. When Joe Biden was at the first couple of years of Joe Biden's administration, when he had like a briefly Democratic control of the House and Senate, that would have been the time to push that through. The legislation had been up there. You asked Claire, we've been talking about Cory Booker's Marijuana Justice Act since like 2018, 2019, practically. And so you've had plenty of legislation sitting there on both houses of Congress, and they could have done it, and they went soft, they went weak. And the failure to really take advantage of Florida, really, another thing was like all the candidates down ballot. You look at a guy like Jay McGovern, he only got 40% against John Rutherford, but he got 40% against John Rutherford, which is
Right.
a better score than even Deegan herself got. Well, I guess it was the previous election. Was it 2020? I think it was 2020. Yeah, when she ran against Rutherford. McCarcel Powell wouldn't have necessarily had a shot of beating Rick Scott, but the fact that the Florida Democrats had a strategy to utilize all 67 counties. They had active candidates on the ground in all 67 counties, and they've been working very hard. The bounce back from 2022 to 2024 was significant, and it's a real shame that the party did not seize on that opportunity to really build on the talent that they have there, and that explains more than anything else explains the failure of Amendment 3 and Amendment 4.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned there, and this is something I was talking with Jim with earlier. The fact that Harris Waltz didn't make any appearances in Florida, and that's one of the talking points that's been on some of the talk shows. Was the fact, and while, like you say, there was a lot of boots on the ground people, Democrats.
Did they do Georgia? Did they do Louisiana?
The Democratic Party itself has abandoned Florida when it comes to that kind of support. Now, the local Democrats, of course, they work their butts off. Up there in Duval County, James Eddy's been almost around the damn clock. Hitting the boots on the ground, phone calls, canvassing, and all that stuff. And he's been doing that for years. He's in almost every Democrat election doing that kind of thing. And there's many others. There's more to mention. But the overall, the national Democratic Party, there could have been some Harris Waltz appearances in Florida, and they did miss it. But again, like I had said, I've said this many times. They spent an awful lot of their time, as a lot of people should, but they spend an awful lot of time romancing those swing states. Yeah,
it's that's true, and there's room for that. I mean, I'd like to see less. I mean, you want to get the big swing states and all that, but I'd like to see more focus on like individual like territories, communities. Like a statewide strategy for a state like Florida isn't going to work, because you need a strategy that recognizes that we've got 67 counties and a lot of them hate each other. A lot of them have their own
Yeah.
territorial beefs.
Mhm.
Like here in Northeast Florida, like, everything you see on TV and in the newspapers, it's like, all that stuff is true, but everything is done based on personal relationships here. Like,
Sure.
there'd be no way of understanding how politics works in a city like Jacksonville if you're just looking at, statistics like it's the back of a baseball card. There's some kind of like, some fifth element, you could say, going on there. And in the South, they didn't their the college territories, like, especially given how much colleges and universities have been affected by these conservatives
Yeah.
under the Trump years and under DeSantis, who is a Trump clone. By the way, we're lucky that DeSantis turned on Trump. Otherwise, he would have been vice president now. Had DeSantis not run for president himself, he would have probably been Trump's running mate, and he'd be a heartbeat away from the presidency now.
Oh,
You know,
yay.
and that
Yay.
heart's not going to compete much longer.
Instead, we get JD Vance. Okay, hillbilly
Oh,
vanilla.
he's it's like, yeah.
Look,
And
I'm from Appalachia, and we have feelings about that man, and they are
Oh,
not good.
no
I
kidding.
I I
If you want
wept for
that,
it.
if you
I
want that
wept for you
rural
as soon
vote,
as I saw it.
you gotta have him in there.
The
Yeah.
guy who
Oh,
pretends to be from Appalachia, yeah,
Right.
That's why
sure.
Tracy was really tempted because of that.
Yeah. And they didn't.
Tracy
Yeah.
rural rigged it.
Yeah. Well,
So we
we were talking before. Now you say rural, and as you go, when we were talking about going through the different time zones, as we're watching the election, the polls come in, the numbers come in through the night last night. Claire and I, we mentioned the same thing, and I know Claire's got Scoot here in a couple of minutes. So, you had mentioned
Mhm.
that when you're watching that the red mirage, the blue shift didn't happen the way it was supposed to. We're watching it. We're watching that red swath just cover the whole, country as it's going across.
Yeah, I mean, Trump outperformed in a lot of categories that we didn't think that he was going to outperform in. Young people, young women, Latinos. I
Yeah.
mean, Black men, like Shelton mentioned, a lot more of them voted for him this time around. They're tired of the country as it is, and you have to ask yourself, like, yeah, okay, inflation. Inflation is certainly like, and I feel for people. We're all feeling it. We're all feeling it when we go to the pump, when we go to the grocery store. But like, how much does the president themselves actually influence that? I mean, people are voting on issues that they think the president just can put their thumb on the scale and change, and that's not reality. And immigration is another one that's such a good one because actually Democrats deport a lot more people. And that is controversial, but it's true. I mean, Obama deported more people in the same time period than Trump did. And that gets lost in the rhetoric. And, it just feels as though so many voters are out there. They're not like us. Like, we're constantly reading the news. We're digging into the policy. We're looking at the facts. Like, that's our job. Most voters, like, they're living their lives. I'm not faulting them. They got to raise their families. They got to go to work. They got to do their thing. And like, being obsessed with politics it could be a little toxic. I think y'all could acknowledge I could be a little toxic. It could be a little
Yeah.
bit of a bummer. But Republicans have found a really good way to just distill it down into little sound bites that resonate with the voters. And Democrats really haven't done the same. And I think part of it is, like you alluded to earlier, like Democrats in Florida, they pull their punches. They do not have the guts to like go to the mattresses. And if they want to win, they got to go to the mattresses.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
Well, it's kind of like
I wanted to ask Claire.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jim. I was gonna ask you.
I was just gonna say, because I know Claire's got to go, in a few minutes, but so I just wanted to pop this out there, just take a little turn and ask you guys.
Just take a little
what
weave.
do you think? I
Little
will weave.
Flip flop a bit.
So exactly. I'm kind of divided on whether I want to weave or not, though. But I'll get back with you on that. What's going to happen to the Jack Smiths and the like? Just your guys' take on that, Claire.
Point
No, they're
blank.
going to be persona non grata. Is Trump going to use the power of the executive to go after him? If he can, he surely will.
Yeah.
What about you,
think he'll
Shelton? What do you
fire
think?
him
Huh?
first day?
Oh, yeah,
First night?
100%. 100%.
Does he have, as a president, the right to fire him?
Special counsel?
Yeah,
I don't
I'm not.
see why not, but I'm not the expert
Okay.
on this, so.
Yeah, me neither. Shelton, what do you think?
I mean, is the
All
Supreme
this-
Court going to stop
all
him?
this-
Hell no.
Yeah, no.
That's a good point. But I mean, it's like, so there's so many different cases going on, a lot of litigation going on, from Mar-a-Lago and top secret documents and, other sexual things and paying off this and whatever. It's like all this stuff is going on. You think it's just going to come to a halt? That we won't get sentencing in November?
They're
do you
working on that now. They're working on that now. They're already saying that they're gonna put that shit to bed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, that's something.
Yeah, in all likelihood, that will be halted because the president, has so much. It'll be delayed, right? It'll be delayed
Yeah.
until after he's not president anymore because they can't be like distracted by such
Right.
things.
Right. Yeah.
All
They're
right.
getting
And
in
then
the
the
way.
What if
federal
he goes
stuff.
for
I
a
mean, that's
second?
not-
They're getting in the way
What
of
if
his.
he goes for
Getting in the way of
second
his.
term?
Getting in the way of his fucking golf games.
Of him doing his job. Of him doing his job.
Well, Claire, I tell you, it's been a joy having you with us, and I know you got to go. So if you got any closing thoughts with us, we'll hang on to Shelton for a few more minutes.
I mean, thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure. I would just say to people, don't lose faith. Touch some grass, as we like to say. If you have your medical marijuana card, why don't you take a big toke? And if you don't, why don't you take a big sip of whatever is in your coffee cup and go to bed tonight and wake up tomorrow and hug the people you love and try to have a good day. But thank y'all so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on. Good to
Thank
see
you, Claire.
Nice to see y'all as well.
Go get him
Bye-bye.
tonight.
Bye. Thanks.
All righty,
All
Shelton.
right.
Shelton.
So,
yeah.
Nice to see you.
Yeah. So now that I think about it, you had mentioned it earlier that you and Claire had worked on that weed thing with Sam way back.
Mhm.
It's been around longer than I had remembered it being.
This 2017, I believe the first, I believe medical marijuana was passed in 2016. To take it back, 2014 was the first time they got it on the ballot, and I believe they almost hit the threshold of 50% or something. But that's when the legislature raised the threshold to 60%.
Right.
That's what happened. They raised the threshold to 60%, and it got 57.5% in 2014, and then it got, I believe, 62.5 or something like that in 2016. And so it was probably about a year into medical marijuana when we started doing that because, part one, because under the law, dispensaries and such are not allowed to advertise and
Advertise.
TV, radio, newspaper, stuff like that. So, a lot of their publicity comes through word of mouth. Now, things like the doctors and stuff,
The
they
doctors
do
can.
that. And yeah, and we had so much activity as far as new dispensaries or just products and people asking questions about it and stories related to it. So we decided to just go ahead and do it. And at the time, there were a lot of people doing it. Now there's a lot of medical marijuana or just cannabis media in general around the country. High Times is being rebooted. It never really went away, but it's getting like some new capital coming in. The success of Vice magazine, just Vice media in general, made all that kind of stuff a lot more popular. But they've been trying to do medical marijuana, get that on the ballot since the 1990s. California, Oregon, Washington State, and all of them originally legalized it to some extent in the 90s. A bunch of states legalized it. And then in 2001, under a guy named John Ashcroft, who's Attorney General for Bush Jr., the Supreme Court said the federal law trumped that. So all those things were stricken and they had to start over again. Now, I mean, it's weird. I feel terrible that the medical marijuana, that the legalization didn't pass through this year. They've been trying to get this done was it 2022? They had a 2022, they were trying to get on the ballot, and they spent 10 million, close to 10 million, I believe. And they couldn't even get like 100,000 signatures out of the ones that were needed. Cause you got people like John Morgan who, doesn't like anybody, and he loves to turn on people. Like, why do all the lawyers hate each other? I don't know. It's none of my business. Never met any of them. And then, the dispute over home grow and such.
Right.
So it wasn't
right.
on the ballot back then. This year, Kim Rivers of True Leaf spent over $100 million. She and Brady Cobb of Sunburn Cannabis, that's the dispensary, right? They've got a branch right down here in 5 Points by where I live. Used to be MedMen, or was going to be MedMen. They both met with Trump. Trump jumping in. It was funny because, Trump was in favor of Amendment 3, and DeSantis was opposed to Amendment 3. And that was really, and even though they never really engaged, like the split between those two is really kind of the, one of the central things that set off this whole election cycle. I think that when DeSantis ran for governor, thought that he probably thought that Trump would have been convicted, or would have thought that Trump, like most normal people, upon being convicted, would just pull out of the race. He probably thought that would happen a bit earlier, Had he not done that, I think he would have been in the top of the running for VP, which would have been very interesting. Now, had the legalization passed, it would have immediately turned Florida's cannabis market into a $2+ billion industry, like within the first year. I mean, probably if they legalized it, I could see them making $1 billion in the first 6 months, just on sales, easily. And I think it was presumed that it would. There are 4 states that were dealing with it this year. Only one of them accepted it. Usually, marijuana amendments tend to pass. They were even passing psilocybin, experimenting with it in some states. This year, 2024, it's the first time that a majority of such amendments failed at the ballot. So it suggests that, and I think a lot of, cannabis investors and such, I think maybe Ms. Rivers' board of directors even will be concerned about, well, have we reached the limit of the popular support that we have for this market? Like, okay, we've got these, because if they spend $100 million, if the biggest dispensary in the nation and the state, can spend $100 million to get it legalized, even though they know it's going to bring in so much more competition and challenges to their dominance in the market, they must be very happy about the cash flow that could potentially come in.
Sure.
So like that's $100 million gone for nothing. And like, having, Big Morgan came out against the amendment. A lot of people were concerned because there's no provision for home grow, which
right.
I mean,
the
it's legal to
home grow is a big thing with a lot of people. And I know people like that run those little doctor clinics, like our friend Daniel Locke. He had a lot of real questions about that because it limits the ability for everyday Joe like me, you, Jim, from opening up a clinic. He says, his opinion of it was they're still going to be big corporate stores. It's not going to be like Colorado. It wouldn't be like Colorado where they went Wild West out there, and there's a lot of people that have pot stores down there, and clubs, restaurants, bars, where you can go in and buy the stuff and smoke it at your table. So
and that would have, and we could have potentially opened the door for that. It's this Amendment 3 wasn't meant to fix everything. Wasn't just a magic pill, so to speak. We've got enough of those in Florida already. It's more of a it's like I always tell, especially my liberal progressive friends about politics, especially in Florida. I compare it to football. It's like you can't just throw Hail Marys on first down. You can't every play can't be going for the end zone. Like you got to think about ball control. You got to think about field position. You got to think about like, the health
Sure.
and the cardio of your players. You got and all these other factors. It's like in boxing, like you can't be out there just throwing haymakers all the time. Like you gotta bob, you gotta weave, you gotta alabiso with it sometimes. Keep
Yeah.
keep the ops on guard, right? To kind of and uh and I think in this case, I mean, 2024, this election is certainly a case where the radical left pissed away another good opportunity and let some very dangerous people back in the White House. And we know he's got scores to sell. Like as far as Jack Smith we were talking about earlier. I mean, if I'm, you know, if I have to bet the tip of my pinky finger on what happens to Jack Smith, I'm saying plane crash. You know, I mean, James Comey's not even joking. It's like,
I know.
like these people are not afraid at all. Like this is look at people like Paul Wellstone. Not to say anything was necessarily deliberate. It's all a coincidence, right? But 400 million people in 400 million people in this country. That's a lot of coincidences, you know.
Sure.
And I thought that with the medical marijuana debate, um, I mean, DeSantis led the debate. He drove the debate the whole time. He spent money on it. I mean, really defeating Amendment 3 and defeating Amendment 4, those are the only like political victories he's had all year. Maybe the last ones he'll get because he's out of there. It'll be Casey's turn in 2026. That's my prediction. But but he was speaking falsehoods, and it goes back to how one of the things I noticed in the column, or from writing the column in years back, was that there's a guy named Harry Anslinger who's the head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, the predecessor of the original drug czar, you could say, came up in the Hoover era or whatnot. Like all the stuff, all the factual data and all this stuff under which marijuana was originally made illegal, back in like 1914, and then, subsequent, strengthening of the law, to the point of having mandatory minimums for joints in some states in the 60s and 70s. A lot of those laws were driven blatantly by falsehoods. Like Harry Anslinger
Sure.
spoke to Congress dozens of times about the dangers of marijuana and other dangerous drugs, and like almost 100% of the stuff he said was bullshit. Like not just in the sense of telling false stories about people, but telling false stories about people that themselves did not exist. These people were saying that Lizzie Borden was high on marijuana when she killed her parents, right? No mention of the child abuse, right? Had to be the weed. And then through the years of, same way they used opium to sort of target the Chinese laborers, or, marijuana to target like migrants, Mexican farm workers, and
Sure.
such. They used to always say, oh, if you let your white daughter smoke marijuana, they're going to end up like hanging out with black dudes and listening to jazz. And now that's
Listening to
true,
jazz music,
but
man.
most of the others, yes, zippity bop bop bop, but that was true, but a lot of it was false,
I
and
know.
it's stunning. You think about it, we're old enough to remember some of the cats in their 20s, even 30s, may not remember how many people's lives were just totally destroyed because they got caught with cannabis. I remember I used to know this girl, not well, just in passing. She had like a little festival scene and all that stuff. Sweet little hippie girl. She got caught. She got caught with weed or something by the authorities, and like, so they ended up like making her wear a wire or something to like go and do like a deal to like, to take down the people she got the weed from, and things went sideways. She ended up getting caught in the crossfire and shot to death. Right? Over like, like, I mean, probably not even enough weed to get the three of us high. Like
Right.
maybe a couple of joints worth of weed, and this kid like loses her fucking life over it. There are thousands and thousands of stories attached to that. Thousands of people that like their right to their ability to work, their ability to get paid properly for the skills they have, but not for these possession conviction, their custody of their kids, they're fucking their educations, school loans, all kinds of stuff. I mean, some of these guys aren't even able to get guns because they've got marijuana convictions. And how sad is that in a country like ours? And this was a great opportunity to switch things around. I think that of course it's corporate. Anything with that much money coming in is going to have a corporate effect to it. But when they're talking about, like, and both sides, for example, fell into the same, and this was, shout out to Tiffany Salome at News4Jack. She did a lot of good reporting on the subject as it was coming through, because once it got on the ballot, everybody had their reporters on it. She actually put some effort into the research and stuff and did her best to kind of counter some of these falsehoods. But the way both sides were saying that, like, weed that's been tainted with fentanyl, right?
Oh,
and
yeah,
it's
that's
true.
a big one.
There have been some cases of, say, people like, you mix it up. This is people do it, say cocaine or something. You mix it up with a little water, you spray it on your weed, it kind of heightens the potency or whatever like that. But that's usually something the end user does. Like, it's not systemic like Hezbollah pagers. It's more of a piecemeal a la carte sort of thing that they do. And I find it to be a very glib and simplistic, in addition to being false, way of approaching the subject, like lying about the fentanyl thing. Like, the fentanyl thing has killed, thousands of people just in Jacksonville, let alone like probably millions. Fentanyl has, I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but fentanyl has maybe killed as many Americans as COVID did. It's that's
bad shit.
It's somewhere. They're not too far apart either way. And it's like, so, I mean, I feel bad for the readers. I feel bad for the million. Fact is, Folio e-column, you can read in Folio. We're in Duval, Clay, Nassau, St. Johns County. I think we might be in South Georgia too, trying to get them into Gainesville at some point, because Gainesville needs us. But if you're a voter and you're outside of the range where my weed column is being published, you never had access to accurate information about this subject at all the entire time it's been on the ballot. If you're outside, if you're not reading the column, or you're not like looking at some of the stuff Tiffany was doing on News4Jack's, like, by and large, you weren't getting proper information about a lot of this. And
but you can, but they can find your column online on the Folio website.
Yes, they can.
Yeah, it's available there.
Got like about 200 of them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, and speaking of Folio, by the way, just a shout out to everybody watching. This podcast is listed in Folio Weekly's Best of 2024. We'd sure appreciate your nominations if you think we're that good.
Absolutely. And we just got a new office. They're doing great stuff there.
I heard about. I did see that. I did see that. Got a new office.
Oh yeah, got some good people. Shout out to Carmen McCree and Amber Ramirez, who combined minds. They do a lot of the graphic design, the layout, as well as the writing. I think I'm let's see, there's me and Teresa, maybe a couple of ad people. Teresa is the business manager, but on the creative side, I think I'm probably the only staffer that's over 30 as far as on the creative side. A lot of them are
young
new
people there. Yeah.
Young people.
Yeah.
Which is, that you guys know how it is. It's we all start out as the youngest guy in the room. So it's fun to be able to, see I mean, some of these guys, like, my hair is older than some of these people, and they're out there crushing it. It's a wonderful thing.
I know it. Hey, Jim, we're closing down on the hour right now. You got any closing thoughts for us as we go forward into this political shitstorm?
Well, I think we're going to get a break from it for a couple months. So I'm grateful for the rest, because I don't think it's going to start until next year.
Yeah, January 20th. Yeah.
But I honestly, yeah. So, I'm just,
January 6th, 2025.
Yeah, 2026.
Exactly.
So,
right.
So, but the thing is I'm so tired of the news feeds. you know. And I know, there's a lot of the news feed sites, they watch what you read, so they just keep feeding you more of it. And I'm just tired of reading about the criminal cases, the litigation, the politics, the election, all of it. It is what it is now. And no matter what we think, even when we talk about, what could the Democrats have done better, et cetera, what did the Republicans do right, et cetera, it's not going to matter 4 years from now, because whatever the strategy is going to be, it's going to have to be different. Feel free to disagree with me, Shelton, because you probably know more about this stuff than I do. But I just think 4 years from now, and we're looking at, 1 year away from 2030, the world's going to be a different place. The economy is going to be a different place. The wall might have an extra few meters added up to it.
Yeah.
But so it's going to be a different thing. So we're going to have to rethink this whole thing, at this point. And I just hope people don't get hurt, especially on the abortion side.
Oh yeah.
The other nice thing about this being over is some of that rhetoric's going to settle down, because nobody, they've already won. So it's kind of like,
I don't
done
know.
with that.
I don't know if it's going to slow down. I think starting in January, he's just going to crank up a whole new batch of it.
But we get a break for Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yeah,
anyway.
well, hopefully.
I have no idea.
Well, guys,
once he starts the first
I know.
100 days,
Is within the first, before he even moves into the house. Well, guys, we had a wonderful discussion tonight. I'm glad you were able to be here, Shelton, and I sure appreciate Claire joining us as well. Jim, again, as always, thank you so much for being here.
Much fun. Thanks, Shelton.
Yeah, going forward with I'm starting the 6th season on the regular version of the podcast. I've moved that up to like
this is the irregular version, right?
This is the irregular. This is the Wednesday night live version. Yeah.
Irregular.
Yeah, but
we'll just call ourselves the irregulars.
Yeah, the other one, I won't start airing episodes until 1st of January, maybe mid-January. I'm doing some makeovers in the studio, equipment, lighting, that kind of stuff. So it's a progress thing. So thank you so much again, Shelton, and we'll see you guys soon.
You're welcome.
All right. Good night, all. Thanks again.